Hi, welcome back. This is David here. Today I'm going to work with the practice midterm question 11 to question 20. Based on my experience, I think these 10 questions are pretty simple. So if you did your job, I will highly encourage you to do it by yourself first. And if you hit into some question, then you can come back and see how do I solve it. Okay, so question 11. All right. It says deflation causes the demand for bonds to move to somewhere and the supply of bonds to somewhere, and bond price is going to do what? So basically, we know it's going to be supply and demand analysis. So let me draw the graph first here. Okay, so vertical, we have price of bond, and horizontal, we have quantity of bond. And then we have our supply and demand. Okay. So notice inflation is really special just because it is going to shift to both supply and demand curves simultaneously. So in this case, a deflation just means we have a decrease in the inflation rate, or a negative inflation rate actually. So with that said, what we know is that the real interest rate is actually the normal interest rate minus the expected inflation, right? So when inflation is dropping, it just means our real interest rate is going to grow. So we know that's a good thing for the bond holder, and it's a bad thing for the bond issuer. So as a result, we're going to have more demand. So demand curve shift to the right, but supply curve shift to the left. Okay. So we're going to have a new intersection over here, and it is quite obvious that, so we're going to say the demand for bond is going to increase, a supply of bond is going to decrease, and obviously the bond price is going to increase with it, so this is going to be increased. And sometimes you will be asked about what about the interest rate. And the only thing you just need to know is that when price increase, the yield or interest rate is going to the opposite direction, so it decreases. Okay, so in this question, that's not a problem. So let's find out which one is the right answer. So it's going to be increase, decrease, and increase. So the right answer is D. Question 12. The economist Irving Fisher, after whom the Fisher effect is named, explained why interest rates does what as the expected rate of inflation does what. All right. So basically, this is just a repetition of what we observed from last question. As you can see over here we have a deflation, which is like negative inflation, right? And eventually, if we figure out how does it change the interest rate is going to drop. So basically, what Irving Fisher is trying to tell us is saying that, well, using this formula, your nominal interest rate would be your real interest rate plus inflation rate. So if the real interest rate does not change, when inflation changes, the normal interest rate is going to change with it at the same direction. All right, so in this case, fall, stabilize is not true. Fall and increase, that's opposite. C is correct. So when interest rate rise, the expected rate of inflation is going to increase. All right, so that's C over here. Paper currency that has been declared a legal tender but is not convertible into coins or precious metals is called what? So this is just fiat money. If you don't know it, just take a look at the definition of fiat money. Electronic money, obviously, that's not what it is. And funny money, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a cash with a smiling face over here. And commodity money is something older that we used to use. For example, the gold and silver, they're both commodity money. And question 14, funds flow from lenders to borrowers. All right, so We know this question is actually asking about how to classify different financial activities. A big category will be direct versus indirect, okay? And over here, obviously, if it is indirect, there will be some kind of financial intermediaries in there. So if it says, for A, it says directly through financial intermediaries, I know that is not right, because direct financial activity should be directly from lenders to the borrowers. So this should be not through financial intermediaries. For B, primarily through government agencies, that is not true. As you know, other than the government securities, well, especially if there is a government agencies, then it could be a financial intermediaries, right? And it says indirectly through financial markets, or indirectly through financial intermediaries. Okay, so the something that is interesting about C, sorry, this is not the right answer. Actually, the right answer is D. We know there should be financial intermediaries in there, but this is slightly confusing. But if you notice, some financial markets connects lenders and borrowers directly. So indirectly through financial markets is like partially right. Okay, it only right under certain circumstances. All right. And question 15, everything else held constant, an increase in marginal tax rates would likely have the effect of what on the demand for municipal bond and what on the demand for U.S. government bond. Okay, so for this type of a question, the keyword is really municipal bond. Okay, so I want you to train yourself, and whenever you see municipal bond in this test, you just try to remember a keyword, tax exempt. Okay, and notice this is federal tax, fed tax exempt. All right. So when we have a higher marginal tax rates, that means whatever profit or interest you're making with your investment, you would pay higher tax. So with that said, it is really obviously to see that if something is tax-free, it will be more preferable to buy this type of a bond when the tax rate is going up, right? So we're going to expect the demand for municipal bond to increase, and at the same time, unfortunately, the demand for U.S. government bond, whose interest have to pay tax rate, is going to decrease. Okay, so the right answer is A. Of the following, the largest is what? Okay, so let me remind you with this graph. So basically, we have a small M1, which include cash and checking deposit. And including M1, notice that M1 is always part of M2. We have some other stuff. We have the money market mutual fund. Okay, we have your saving account. Okay, and we have some CDs. All right, so that means M2 is larger. So to be honest, in this class, you have never been introduced with something even larger. So M2 is your choice. Collateral is what lender receives if a borrower does not pay back the loan. So this is just easy. You have to, give the lender some assets so that when you default on your loan or your borrowings, he can just get your asset. Okay, so that's what collateral is. It is pretty simple. All right, so you wouldn't give him a liability, right? So it won't be an offering, won't be a present. All right, for number 18, the spread between interest rates on low-quality corporate bonds and U.S. government bonds is what during the Great Depression. All right, so whenever there's a depression, so Great Depression just means higher risk. Okay, so if you don't remember this flight to quality thing, I'm going to show you how to get it with the very basic supply and demand analysis, right? So for example, we have two markets over here. And the first one is low quality bond. All right. And we have a supply and we have a demand. All right. And then we have a high quality bond market where we also have supply and demand over here. Okay, and again, the vertical is the price, horizontal is quantity traded, right? So when there's a recession, as we know that the low quality bonds risk is going to grow by a lot. So basically we want less. We want to be safe when we're in the depression. So we're going to reduce our demand of a low quality bond. So as you can see, the price of low quality bond is going to drop. So the interest rate of low quality bond is going to increase. All right. And where shall we put our money at during recession? Basically, we're going to buy high quality bonds. So even though the return is slightly lower for high quality bond, it could be much lower. But what we want is really the safety of our money, right? So the demand is going to shift out. So for high quality bond, the price is going to increase and interest rate is going to drop. Okay, so now we know how does these two interest rate changes. The only thing left is, do you know this, the function of interest spread? Okay, so the spread is really the interest of low, so spread is always a positive thing. So interest rate of a low quality bond, which has higher interest rate, minus the interest rate of high quality bond. And in this case, I know this thing is growing while this thing, the IH, is decreasing. So the spread eventually gets larger. Okay. So we're going to say it will widen significantly during the Great Depression. Question 19. The Bush tax cut reduced the top income tax bracket from 39% to 35% over a 10-year period. Supply and demand analysis predicts the impact of this change was a what interest rate on municipal bond and a what interest rate on treasury bonds. Okay, so it goes back to our supply and demand analysis. Okay, so if we have municipal bond over here and we have government bond over here, as you notice, municipal bond is federal tax free. However, since the tax rate drops, the money we saved by buying municipal bond becomes less, right? So in this case, the return of municipal bond gets relatively smaller compared to the return of government bond. So what is going to happen is that people is going to take their money out of the municipal bond and put it into government bond. Okay. All right, so what we need to do is just to further get how does the price change, all right? So for municipal bond, the price is decreasing, so interest rate is going to go up. So it will be a higher interest rate on municipal bond. And for government bond, since demand shift to the right, the price of government bond increase and interest rate is going to go down. So the interest rate on treasury bonds will be lower. So C is the right answer. And question 20, the last one for today. Currently, a 2-year treasury bond has a yield of 1.8%, while the yield on a 5-year treasury bond is 2.8%. What is the risk premium of the typical A-rated 5-year corporate bond with a yield of 4.8%? So if you remember, if something, for example, the yield of a corporate bond it should equals to the yield of a risk-free bond plus the risk premium. Okay, so it is saying that since your bond is riskier than the risk-free bond, you have to pay me some extra interest rate to compensate the extra risk I bear by holding your bond, right? And the risk-free bond rate is going to be a government bond. Government bonds rate. Okay? So the only question is that there is one distractor in here. You were given two interest rate of different government bond. And this is not hard to identify that since we want to get the risk premium of a 5-year corporate bond, we're going to use a 5-year treasury bonds interest rate over here as our benchmark. So eventually it's going to be 4.8 over here. That is going to equals to 2.8% plus the risk premium, which tells us the risk premium is 2%. Okay, so if it is a 2-year corporate bond, we're going to use this 1.8%. Okay. Okay, so that completes today, and tomorrow I'm going to upload the answer of next 10 questions. Thank you very much for watching.